I want to first give a deep thanks to the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, which is sponsoring this presentation tonight and is also helping sponsor our entire program over 2 days of activities here at the University of Louisville. We had a workshop this afternoon at the University of Louisville for our residents and faculty and graduate students throughout the university. We had a huge crowd to hear Dr. Meichenbaum, who really transfixed the audience in a very charismatic presentation. Tomorrow we have a full-day workshop for professionals, and then we have a benefit dinner tomorrow night featuring Eric Hipple, who was a quarterback for the Detroit Lions and wrote the book Real Men Do Cry, about men in depression. This is an example of some of the outreach and educational work that we do here at the University of Louisville Depression Center. And if you're new to our talks, we'd invite you to keep your eyes on our activities. We have a public presentation about every month. And if you check our website, just type in University of Louisville Depression Center, you can follow our program for our public presentations. Tonight we are very lucky to have Donald Meichenbaum, who is recognized as one of the 10 leading psychologists in the world. If you study psychology like some of the people in the audience have, you read his books, you know his name as one of the great leaders, along with Aaron Beck and Albert Ellis and some of the other, in a sense, legendary figures of psychology.
Lighten up.
What's that?
Lighten up.
Lighten up, he says. And recently he's been working at the Melissa Institute, where he is the director of research, and he's been focusing on resilience, or helping people that have had some traumatic things happen to them and helping them bounce back. It's the topic of his talk tonight. So let's give a warm Louisville welcome for Dr. Meichenbaum.
Thank you, Jess.
Thank you.
Good evening and welcome. Thank you for your attendance and interest, and moreover, let me commend you on your good judgment in being here. This is a fascinating topic that I've been heavily involved in. So I'm a clinical psychologist who retired from the University of Waterloo, which is in Ontario, Canada, where I've been there for some 40 years doing work on people who've been exposed to traumatic events. And this is absolutely one of the most fascinating topics. If you go home and turn on the news, it's just a litany of various traumatic events. You know, you watch it and you cannot believe, in terms of people being exposed to natural disasters or various forms of combat exposure or illnesses, accidents, and the like. And the piece that makes it quite fascinating is that if you look at any kind of traumatic event, and I've been involved in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina and Sandy, in the aftermath of 9/11, the Columbine shooting, and working with returning soldiers from Iraq and Afghanistan who have been exposed. People who've been on motor vehicle accidents, who've been exposed to various losses and family members and the like. Here's the interesting question. The interesting question is that in the aftermath of these kinds of exposures to traumatic events, no matter which traumatic event you look at, most people are impacted, but 70% of individuals will go on and evidence resilience, or the ability to bounce back, to deal with ongoing adversities, while approximately 25 to 30% will show continuing ongoing distress. That may show up as psychiatric disorders like post-traumatic stress disorders or depression, even to the point sometimes of suicidality. People may self-medicate using substances. They have a variety of adjustment problems. So here's the interesting research question. What distinguishes the 75% versus the 25%? Because if we as a community, not only of mental health workers, but just as everyday citizens, could better understand that distinction, then maybe we could be better informed. Maybe we could help, for instance, with regard to returning soldiers, 2 million have served. In Iraq and Afghanistan, various studies indicate that approximately 365,000 or so have returning difficulties and having adjustment problems that you read about, that you hear. This may take the form of violence or substance abuse, homelessness, overreactions to reminders of those events. But as I've included in your handout, if you look at the military, if you look at civilians, it's absolutely remarkable. You know, take 9/11. You know, these were people who witnessed the terrorist attack, people jumping out of buildings and so forth. And when they went and tracked that down, they found out that less than 10% had any long-term clinical problems. In fact, when they did the follow-up, it was less than 2%. I mean, come on, you're putting me on. I mean, do you see what if you look at these natural disasters like the tsunamis and others, then 70,000 people died in Asia and so forth. And how do people actually pull together? What's the nature of their resilience? What's the building blocks? Now, before I get you to address that issue with me, I need you to have an appreciation of a couple of factors that I included in your handout. That is, I've put together this handout about ways to bounce back, and at your leisure, you'll be able to follow up this presentation. So keep in mind that in the aftermath of traumatic events, even prisoners of war, victims of the Holocaust and so forth, and people who have had losses. I mean, you just look at the Malaysian airplane you look at Newtown, you look at all of these kinds of events. One of the things that becomes really fascinating is people can actually be resilient and have trauma experiences concurrently. These are not an either-or proposition. It's not that you're in one place or another in terms of the kind of impact that this has. And in fact, one could be resilient in one domain of their lives, but not at other domains. Or you could be resilient at one time and not at other times in terms of the evolution of this particular process. Now, in my work with returning soldiers, my life actually turned into a kind of Martin Scorsese character. You remember, he's the film director. So we did interviews with returning soldiers, and we listened to what they've been through, and we've also noted what are the kinds of coping strategies that they used. How did they negotiate? What are the kinds of building blocks? So I've spent the last couple of years listening to these folks tell their story. And in your handout, I'm going to give you the algorithm of exactly what you need to do in order to have prolonged post-traumatic stress disorder, in order to have adjustment problems. So God forbid anything bad happens to you. And that's really challenging. If you look at people in the United States, various kinds of research indicates that something of the order of 50 to 60 people will experience these kinds of what are called criterion A events. Near-death experiences, things that are perceived as personal threats. The floods, the tornadoes, the victimization. Take women in the United States. That's a really interesting testimony to resilience. There are approximately 120 million women in the United States. 1 in 4 women in the United States, developmentally, will be exposed to either sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional neglect, or exposure to domestic violence or community violence. 12% of women will be raped, and 20% will be raped a second time. Intimate partner violence or domestic violence occurs once every 15 seconds. 38% of women in the United States will have repeated victimization of different categories. It's not that they're asking for it. It's just that they're in an ecological niche that puts them at further. Now, here's the interesting piece. Of that 68 million, less than 7 million develop any kinds of clinical problems that will make their way to the depression center. So the interesting question is, what are the other 60 million women doing? How do they keep going in spite of? What are the building blocks that they engage in? Now, in order to answer that question, in order to have you appreciate the nature of those building blocks, what I would like to do is to show you two small clips from a really interesting movie called Alive Day Memories. This is actually a film that HBO made that you could actually order. And what you're going to do is to see an actor named James Gandolfini, who recently died, if you're familiar. He was Tony Soprano. In fact, when I watched The Sopranos, I hated his therapist. She is the most dysfunctional. If I was Tony Soprano's therapist, I could have ended the series in 8 sessions, okay? I would have ruined the entire franchise. But he is a terrific interviewer, okay? And what I would like to do is to show you two clips with female soldiers. Now, some of this is tough to take, but I'm going to stop it afterwards and have you tell me what contributed to their resilience. And then we'll look at the formula of what makes for chronic disability and what you could do in the physical, interpersonal, cognitive, behavioral, and most importantly, spiritual way. The major way that people cope with violence, with the impact of trauma in North America, is use some form of religion and spirituality. Let's take a look and let them tell you the story of resilience. Perfect. Thank you, sir.
Almighty God, we thank you for your presence here with us today.
We provide from above, from the mountain, through the prairie, to the ocean, wildwood from. I have the honor to present Comrade Davis and salute. I have for you the DFW Lifetime Membership. She said she was like that, right? So that's not different.
We should have that too.
This is the most meaningful tattoo for me. It's got my life day, the day that I got hit, the unit I was with, and where I got injured at.
The Alive Day is a day that they were intended to die, but somehow they survived.
Why did you do it?
It had a change in my life. I was with the wrong people at the wrong times and just to kind of stay out of trouble, so I joined the military.
Where's your home?
I came in South Carolina. Where we were raised. This town will suck you in and keep you. And the only way out is marry somebody out of state and move with them or join the military basically. I can't wait to get back. I want to finish what I started. Most of the people around my school that already had kids and 2 or 3 of them. I was the lucky one. Thank God. This right here, it's a gel runner to cushion for your muscles and your bones and stuff. There's no like pressure supposed to be on the bottom of it. It's supposed to like even out the pressure. I call it master because the bone of it kind of stuck out like that, and I could stick it out the window of the car and look it at the mirror and do that, It looked like Snoopy. And this is actually, believe it or not, this is my big leg. This leg, I've had so much problems with it. They had to cut me right here and over here to actually save the leg, and they did a sling graft right here. Every bone below my knee, including my knee, was broken.
How long did I get before you got hurt?
Approximately 3 months.
Now, this is her Humvee, okay? This is what she experienced.
I found this leg, it was underneath the seat.
You found this leg?
Well, I didn't know where it was to begin with. It was kind of crushed underneath my seat. My right leg was on top of the steering wheel, bent backwards, and the foot was cut off right above the boot, and it was hanging off the other end of the steering wheel.
What was it like in the hospital?
I woke up every day for a while saying, I'm 21 years old at the time. I'm gonna wake up every day with no foot. How am I gonna get myself through it? I never really felt sorry for myself because of this, and I told everybody, don't, if you're gonna cry, do it in another room because I'm happy, keep me happy, and we'll all be happy. But when I had my breakdowns, it was really, really hard. It kind of hit me all at once, I guess, and it tore me up, it really did.
What did you miss?
There's 2 things that I used to love to do before this was drive and dance. I actually danced my first song on my prosthetic 2 Fridays ago, and it was emotional, it really was. I loved it. I felt normal again.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we got a very special guest in the house this evening. A true American hero, Miss Crystal Davis. A year ago, Crystal was out serving her coaching in Iraq and ended up getting involved in an IED that ended up taking her leg. She's celebrating her Alive Day. What that represents is a year ago, she wasn't going to make sure she was going to be here with us tonight. She was afraid she was not going to be able to dance ever again.
I'm going to show you one more and then ask you to tell me what you saw contributed to their resilience.
I remember looking out the window and just thinking about how quiet it was. I mean, it was one of those nights in the desert. I'll never forget it. It was just crisp. It was clear sky, and there's nothing like the desert sky in Iraq. That's one thing that I'll never forget. The came straight through my shoulder and then exploded right next to my head, just behind me. I was very scared to look at my own amputation. I was very scared to know what it looked like. Because if I had looked at it, then I sort of acknowledged it. And for a while, initially, I didn't want to. I wanted, if I didn't see it, if I didn't think about it, then, it didn't exist. I feel so many things. I mean, I went from being a soldier, I pee in water bottles. I mean, I really wanted to lead soldiers in combat. I wanted that experience. I wanted to be put to the test. But I remember there was a very distinct moment when I finally realized what I was. I was an amputee from the war. And I was just like the guys I saw that were missing 2 legs, or that had, extensive facial scarring or burns or a bad brain injury. I mean, I was one of them. This arm actually was one of a kind. I think there's now a few others. But I was not happy with the prosthetics that they gave me. I said, I don't want to look like a robot, and I don't want to wear a freaking hook. I mean, anybody that knows me, I was very passionate, very adamant about this. I refused to train on it. I would not. I had wanted nothing to do with it. And everybody said I was crazy. They said, well, how are you going to do things? Well, I'll figure out a way to do it without the damn hook. It brings a little bit of anxiety. Walking around, is somebody going to ask me what time it is, and I'm not going to be able to move my arm up to look at the time because it doesn't move? And is somebody going to come up and touch it accidentally or bump it? I try to say, you know what, this is who I am. I think people come away from the war wanting to feel that they made a difference, wanting to feel like their sacrifice of their time or their energy was worth it. I went over a young lieutenant. I had a lot of energy, and I was very naive. I don't think I fully understood what could happen, or how people are then forced to live with the consequences of war. War is, it's horrible. I don't like the sounds associated with it, the smells I associate with it. But I'm glad I did. Came back, a lot of people would ask me, well, how do you feel about this? Do you ever think you'll get married? Do you ever think you'll have a boyfriend? Do you ever think you'll have kids? And, I didn't know the answers to all those questions, but as I go through life, I'm learning that it has nothing to do with whether or not I'm an amputee. Do I wonder if my kid, if I ever have a kid, do I wonder if they'll love me, for who I am? I hope so.
What were you just thinking about?
The reality of, will I be able to raise a kid? I won't be able to pick up my son or daughter with 2 arms. I won't. But I just, I hope they still love me, and I hope I'll still be a good parent. What can you do?
Well, it matters. I think you're going to be a wonderful man.
Okay, you want to get the lights, please? So, I have spent the last 2 years listening to stories just like this and trying to figure out, as you might, what is it that you saw in these two women's accounts? And I intentionally chose to show you women because they are overlooked. Not only are they exposed to combat, but they're exposed to sexual victimization with no follow-through. They have higher compassion fatigue and the like. So before I give you my answer, and actually I have follow-up data on both of these women, I'd be interested in ascertaining what you got out of this that you think contributed to their resilience, their ability to bounce back. You know, what, if anything, did you see in their accounts here that you think contributed to their... Yeah, please, start us off, ma'am.
Both of them had a great amount of reception by the community,
right.
By the community,
right. They had social supports. Let me give you a little Canadian data since I come from Canada. Canadian soldiers who served in Vietnam had a higher incidence of post-traumatic stress disorder than U.S. soldiers. That's kind of interesting. Now, why? Well, first of all, they were volunteers. They went over with higher expectation as compared to being drafted. Second of all, when they came back, there were no particular services. So no matter what you thought of the war, you were considered a baby burner, you're considered duped, and so forth. Whatever your attitude is or concerns about the present war, you come back and you're very differently receptive. Okay? So in both instances, you got the nature of this. What else did you see that you think, yeah, please, sir.
Preconditioned perspective on what to absorb and what to reflect.
Right, in terms of what they took in and how they handle it. And one of the things that becomes really interesting is the kind of sense of patriotism, the sense of band of brothers. They want to go back and finish the job, you know, and they took initiative. You know, this woman got out of that community, right, by joining. I'm just, what else did you hear or see that, yeah, please, ma'am?
I would say, while there was a natural period of grief
right.
or difficulty addressing what was, they both accepted that this is what is.
They accepted it.
And now what am I going to do?
Right, and not only what I'm going to do, but they have a future orientation, right? Am I going to be a good mother? I want to go back and dance. You know, we're going to see the power of optimism, realistic optimism, not just some highfalutin. I mean, you know, I'm in town, right? I got to go to the American Slugger. You know, I got grandchildren I have a grandson, right? Recently, 3 years old. You got to hear this story, right? I was just visiting him. They taught him baseball rules. So what's the first rule that he learned? Don't throw the bat. You know the second rule they taught him? Don't poop on the field. No, this is right across the street from where he plays baseball, they have a supermarket that has a bathroom. My son put up a sign there that says dugout. So before each game, they used, anyway. So here's my favorite thing on optimism, right? They did a study on rookie cards. Okay, these are pictures that when someone's coming into the major leagues, they take. Now, some of the pictures they take, these guys are enthusiastic. You get the sense that they're going to make it, right? Other guys don't think they're going to make it. You know, they look dour and so forth. I don't know whoever thought of this study. They found out that the people on their rookie cards who look concerned live 7 years shorter than the people who smile on their rookie cards. Nuns who keep optimistic diaries do much better. You see that in their accounts. What else did you see in these? Yes, ma'am, please.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Is there a curve that many people go through in which not only are they not optimistic, but it's dire for a long, long time, and somehow they claim or climb up into looking toward the future? And in other words,
in spite of that long trajectory.
Yes.
Okay, let me put that on the back burner because I just want you to get the story of these two women, and then we're going to talk about that trajectory, okay, and the different pattern. Anything else? Who saw the tattoo on the first woman's arm? What was the tattoo?
Tigger.
Who?
Tigger.
Tigger. What does Tigger do?
Bounces.
He bounces back, okay? If I see soldiers or other people, the first thing I ask about is their tattoo. Okay? You want to learn about people? Ask about tattoos. Yes, sir, please.
Separate from the idea of optimism, just getting involved with something you love, such as dancing.
Right, and not only that, how many of us could do push-ups like her, right? No, I mean, that becomes kind of, and what about her sense of humor? Putting out Snoopy on the outside and using that. I mean, look how she transforms the pain. Not only that, here's the key. If I was seeing Dawn, the second one, the first thing I would ask her is, how do women pee in water bottles? No, I mean, that's a challenge. I mean, how do you? I mean, she want that? Not only that, what is her sense of determination, right? I'm not going to wear any goddamn arm. Right? I mean, you're starting to get at the building blocks, the sense of optimism, the nature of social supports, the kind of belief systems, the sense of humor. Anything else that stands out? Yeah, please, sir. Youth. Being younger helps. And, you know, the interesting question is, do older people evidence resilience as well, with the wisdom of looking back? Okay? So, in fact, if you look at those Canadian soldiers, between 18 and 24, they had a higher risk. So actually, youth there actually backfired. If you look at soldiers who are going into the present, you know, there's something in the order of about 30 vets now dying by suicide per day. So one of the things that becomes interesting is that youth could actually backfire under certain circumstances because they have developmental tasks. You have young people going into the military who never held a job, who never had that kind of transition, and that gets violated. So sometimes youth works and sometimes it doesn't in that particular case. Anything else? Yes, ma'am, please.
They were both tough.
They were both tough.
They were tough as nails going in, you could tell.
Uh-huh. So let me give you the update on these people. I was recently presenting at a conference for people who work with returning soldiers, and some woman in the audience recently presented with Gail, the first one. She's now married and has a child. Okay? So one of the things that becomes interesting is that I have put together these accounts in a book called Roadmap to Resilience. In fact, if you have a chance, you're welcome to take a look at it. You'll see the website right on the first page of your handout. Okay? I have a few copies here if you're interested in purchasing it. And one of the things that becomes interesting in that book is that it summarizes specific techniques at the physical, interpersonal, emotional, cognitive, behavioral, and spiritual ways that people, and in fact, you could either go and read any section, or the other possibility is you go to Appendix B that has a list of all the potential problems that you might encounter, okay? And it has the page number that you can go to. So it goes in terms of substance abuse, sleep disturbance, how do you get positive emotions, how do you control negative emotions, how do you communicate more effectively with your spouse? That's a big section, okay? So if you get to that, let me tell you, use it as a stocking stuffer, okay? You know, for Christmas, you could just say, I went to a workshop, turn to page so-and-so, it might be helpful, right? You know, I'll get to that in a moment. Okay, so let me tell you what's on page 72. If you get there, it's Dawn's account, the second lady. She says, the RPG blast of my Humvee in Iraq collapsed my right lung and led to the amputation of my right arm, as you saw in that film. Deep down, she says, I have not changed. I don't walk around all day looking in the mirror. I'm myself. But there are moments, she reports, that catch me by surprise. Oh my God, I only have one arm. I get anxious. It's never going to be easy. In spite of my injuries and losses, I went on to demonstrate what Plato called thumos, a kind of fire in the belly that is essential to the reintegration process. There is also, and this is the co-occurrence that becomes interesting, anxiety, frustration, fatigue, phantom pain, restricted mobility, self-pity, embarrassment, shame, and a wish to retreat. There is mourning for the past and what I once could do. And yet, she reports there is happiness. Through grit, that was what you were describing, and a can-do attitude, I am now the founder and CEO of a 100-person defense contracting firm, which I started after leaving Walter Reed Hospital. I drive, I use a BlackBerry, I play tennis left-handed, and I do yoga. My name is Dawn Halfaker. So when you get to that section, you'll know the person who goes with that. So one of the things that becomes fascinating to me, and that in fact I spend some time, is what is it that distinguishes the individuals who make it? Okay? They're impacted, but somehow they're able to keep going in spite of. Okay? I mean, you watch the news and you go, how could that? And what are the nature of their resilience? In fact, if you go to the website that's on your first page, the www Roadmap to Resilience, one of the things you get are people who are now submitting examples of their resilience. So a mother of a fireman who was lost in 9/11, whose body was never found, gets a call whenever they find body parts. Could you imagine that? And what she's done is decided to collect the body parts and put them in a cigar box, and they will be buried with her. A mother of a child who was killed at Newtown by Adam Lanza decides to cremate the ashes of her son and put it in an urn at the end of her bed, right at the night table. And each morning she has a conversation with her lost son, talking about her commitment to make the world safer. A mother and father decide, after the loss of their son, where the body was never found, they discover that their son donated blood. And they have the vial of blood. And they decide to have a funeral ceremony, a formal funeral ceremony where they're going to bury the vial of blood. Now, from a psychological point of view, that is really interesting. Why should each of those activities that are spiritually based, that are meaning-making, of whereby people can make a gift of their experience, of trying to transform their pain, why should that be therapeutic? You see, from my perspective, each of us are not only Homo sapiens, we are Homo narrans. Okay? And what are Homo narrans? Homo narrans are storytellers. Okay? And I'm going to suggest, I'm going to argue forcefully, that what distinguishes the 25% who get stuck versus the 75% who are impacted but go on has to do with the nature of the story that they tell. And in fact, if you have the handout available to you, I will ask you to turn to page A10. Okay? Now, what's also here on the very first page I should point out, okay, well, let's go first back to the cover page. Okay, so let me highlight that. Okay, so I run an institute for violence prevention called the Melissa Institute. Melissa was a young lady who grew up in Miami, Florida, and she was attending school at Washington University in St. Louis. And she was carjacked and brutally murdered. Now, when such a tragedy like that befalls an individual, their family, friends, relatives, the community at large, one of the things that becomes really fascinating is that people cope by transforming their pain. So Melissa's parents actually created an institute in her name that's designed to reduce violence. Okay? And depending upon your interest and so forth, I invite you to go to the Melissa Institute website. In fact, we do annual conferences on a whole variety of topics, on resilience, on how to make a violent youth, on domestic violence. This year's conference is going to be on human trafficking, okay, which is a major problem in Miami. That website, www.melissainstitute.org, has had 2 million hits worldwide this year, which is really an interesting kind of way of giving this kind of activity. So I invite you to visit that, and you'll get more of these stories as well as the roadmap to resilience. The alternative is, if any questions emerge following this, you have my email address. I live in Clearwater, Florida. It's going to be 70 degrees there next week when you are trying to cope with snow, ice, and driving in this, okay? You could come and visit me. You will find me on the beach, okay, with a Mai Tai in one hand and pina colada in the other, waiting for dolphins to go by. In fact, if you get to see the movie Dolphin Tale 2, which is about Winter, the one who lost his tail, okay, and you see where they put the turtle in the water, I'm behind the turtle with a Mai Tai in one hand and a pina colada in the other, okay? This is where I live. So the alternative is, you want to come and chat and drink, I'm there, okay? What distinguishes the people who get stuck versus what you saw here? Now, let me invite you to go to A10. I'm about to give you what I think the literature says is the algorithm of how to screw up your life. You know, just in case you're doing well in the aftermath of some disaster, you could say, let's look at A10. Okay? No, if there's any merit to this algorithm, then we could start to think about what are the alternative implications of this, right? So it turns out that we now have, from research, a whole variety of findings of what contributes to people getting stuck in that 25% group. And I'm going to walk you through very quickly, because we only have limited time. I'll do this in a lot more detail in the workshops tomorrow and actually show videos of clients who have bounded back. Okay? So I'm going to walk you through the sort of the cognitive, the emotional, the behavioral, and the spiritual. So one of the things that becomes really interesting in the aftermath of some kind of trauma exposure, natural disasters, victimizations, the losses, grief, traumatic bereavement, is that often language is inadequate to describe what you've been through, okay? So one of the things in terms of storytelling that has emerged is that people in some sense become poets of sorts. You know, you have no idea what this was like. I mean, the loss was traumatic. I mean, you could not imagine. I'm telling you, I'm a prisoner of the past. I'm a walking time bomb. I'm an emotional yo. And what I'm going to do is argue that those are not just figures of speech. That if you tell yourself and others those kinds of sentences, you come to live it. You live the stories that you tell. And that there's a kind of mental defeating aspect to this. You berate yourself. You need to feel guilty and ashamed of what transpired. You need to engage in what is called contrafactual thinking. You need to ask questions about why me, why now, only if. You want life to have a reverse gear. The other thing that would be really important in order to stay in that 25% group is try to avoid. Okay? Keep it a secret. Don't share it with anyone. If you look at people who have been victimized, rape victims and the like, those people who have not shared the account with others, and it doesn't have to be with a therapist, it just has to be with the support of others. And the nature of the sharing doesn't even have to be verbal. It may be art expressive. If people do not see that, then they're more likely to get stuck. Not only that, you need to magnify your fears. Not only do you need to avoid thinking about it, one of the things that's really interesting about the research is the more that you try to suppress, the more that you try not to think about it, it has a boomerang effect of actually producing more intrusive ideation. Okay? And not only that, you should avoid reminders. Okay? Try to remain hyper-vigilant. Okay? I mean, one of the things that's interesting about returning soldiers is that they're really prone to automobile accidents. In fact, there's a whole program now on, so they get reminders of what it was like to drive over there. and the kind of impact that it has. It would be really valuable if you want to get out of this unstuckness to find meaning, to make a gift of. You can now see the counterweight of what's going on. As Gail says, if you wanted to cry, go into the other room, okay? Now you have to follow their recovery. Remember that post-traumatic stress disorder, okay, is a story of non-recovery. That the normative response in the response to trauma has to be resilience. Okay? Not only that, it would be valuable if you try to cope by using some form of self-medication, some kind of avoidance behavior. You should try and dose yourself. Alcohol would do well. There are other polysubstances that you could use as well. Moreover, you might engage in risk-taking behavior, protective acts, safety behaviors, all of which that are going to keep you stuck. At the spiritual level, you need to think that there's a struggle with God. I don't have time here, but I'll show it tomorrow. I have a wonderful film called Where Was God on 9/11? And it's really interesting because these folks use spirituality in the aftermath of coping. One goes to a church and thinks that his dead son is there. One gets the impression that there's an angel who's come, that God knows something that she didn't know. And then the final guy is really interesting because he is angry at God. He believes that God, who is all-knowing and all-powerful from his religious belief, could have prevented this. The Son and the Holy Spirit, but God, according to him, is a barbarian. Now, one of the things that we know that's really interesting is that anger interferes with the processing of emotion. So at your leisure, you're welcome to look at these kinds of things and think about what could be done to handle this. And how does this change over time? Your question about the trajectory. Your whole business of, I could be resilient at one time and not at other times. That this changes over the course of a life. Let me conclude with the following client. Woman comes to see me, and she is what every clinician wants to walk into his office. She has a heck of a lot going for herself. In fact, there's an acronym called YAVIS. She's young, attractive, verbal, intelligent, and successful. If clinicians only treated YAVISes, that your life would be rich. These people are going to get better with or without you. So you might as well take advantage of it, okay? But this woman's life has turned around on a dime. She's now suicidal. Her marriage is falling apart. And what is it that could have changed her life like a dime? It's a tragedy. She's at home alone with her 11-year-old daughter, Vicky. Her husband's out of town. He travels a lot. During the course of the evening, she is awoken with a noise coming from downstairs. As she attends, more and more it becomes apparent, somehow, some way, someone's in the house. How could that be? She lives in a safe area. So given her maternal instinct, she awakens and goes into Vicky's room, and she and Vicky hide in this deep closet. Now, fortunately, the intruder or intruders do not make their way upstairs. So she comes out relatively unscathed with her daughter, but fully shaken. So as you would expect, she calls the police, she calls her husband. They engage in a number of safety acts of changing the locks, getting an ADT system and the like. And moreover, her husband convinces her that in order to protect Vicky, one of the things she should do is get a gun. She doesn't want guns, she doesn't like guns, but he convinces her how many other mothers in the area have guns. So under the pressure, this woman gets the gun. And she keeps it at the night table. She swears she will never, ever use this again. She would never use the gun. Several months go by. Husband's out of town once again. And she is awoken once again by a noise emanating from downstairs. So her immediate impression is, oh my God, it must be the shutters. It must be the storm that's going on. Maybe I'm dreaming about what happened the last time. And as she attends more and more, it becomes apparent that someone is in the house. How could that be? So given her maternal instinct, she's going to once again protect Vicky. But this time something very different and tragic occurs. Because she leans over to the night table, takes the gun in hand, just in case they come up, right? And as she's about to exit her bedroom, Vicky was awoken by the same noise. Comes running in, throws open the bedroom door, and the worst of all things happen. The door hits the woman's hand, and she is about to blow out the brains of her 11-year-old daughter. Not only that, she's going to sit in a catatonic state for 24 hours holding this body until the husband comes home and discovers her. This woman, marriage falls apart in about 40% of these kinds of cases. So the interesting question is, what, if anything, could you do to help? I mean, there's no cure. There's nothing that's going to bring back Vicky. Not only that, this woman is a teacher at Vicky's school. And it's difficult for her to go back to work, her whole social support. There are reminders of this entire tragedy. So as her therapist, I sit there and listen to this horrific accounts. And my humanity reaches out. I mean, I have 4 children, 7 I can't imagine anything worse. And she tells me her story. And I ask her, what was so special about Vicky? You see, some mothers I have who sit in that chair don't even like their children. And she sounds to me, and I'm going to have a field day with this expression, that Vicky was wiser than her years. And I say to this woman, I'd like to ask you to do something, and you should feel free to say no. But I would feel both honored and privileged, I use that phrase all the time, to get a sense of who Vicky was. And would you, between now and next time, and that'll be only in 2 days, consider the possibility of bringing in a picture album of Vicky? I would be both honored and privileged to get a sense of who she was. Now the pictures that parents keep of kids are kind of interesting. I had 4 kids, and before cell phones, we had a lot more pictures of the first 2 kids than the last 2 kids. I mean, a pony ride is a pony ride, right? It's the same bloody, not only that, parents tend to take pictures of really nice things that their kids have done. Here he is, the first birthday. Here's the pony ride. Here he is when he made the baseball team. Parents rarely, if ever, take pictures of bad things their kids have done. Here he is beating up his brother. Cursing out grandma was a big day. How much time do you have? Smearing feces? We put that on video. We could fill up your whole night, okay? If parents took pictures of everything their kids did, it would be like a birth control device. You know, open the picture album and go, been there, done that. It's okay, go to sleep, okay? This woman brings in the picture album of Vicky. It is remarkably painful to look at. And I could say to her, if Vicky, who is here right now, if she could curl up into those loving arms and look into those woefully sad eyes, what advice, if any, would Vicky, who is wise beyond her years, offer? And moreover, if this woman kills herself, which is a real possibility, what happens to Vicky's memory? So what we're going to do is use the absent other here of Vicky, just like they do in many studies on bereavement and the like, the restorative retelling. And moreover, if this woman kills herself, the memory dies. So how do you boast the resilience in this kind of domain? She decides that in order to honor the memory of Vicky, she's going to go around and explain to parents about the dangers of keeping guns in the house. she's going to become an advocate for gun locks. You see, after tragedies, you don't cure PTSD. And why do that? You see, her memory of Vicky is tied to the moment that the gun goes off. And all the sensorium of holding this body for 24 hours. You know what the research shows? You don't get rid of bad memories. You help people retrieve positive memories. You help people develop a coherent story where they can embed the trauma. When you heard Gail and Dawn, when they say, I want to go back and finish the job, when they're talking about what they did to honor their band of brothers, their sense of patriotism, when she's singing the song in Ramona, California with the others, they are all in the midst of helping people develop a coherent, healing narrative that combats those pages on A10 to A13. We are all storytellers. And my message is that the nature of the stories that people tell themselves and others will influence whether you fall into the 75% group or remain in the 25% group. And that there are a number of specific coping strategies, some of which are included about positive emotions. You know, it was interesting to watch the video because they're now looking at the neurophysiology of depression. Well, it turns out that there's increasing data to show that if you're realistic, optimistic, if you're forgiving, if you have expressions of gratitude, if you have instances of love and awe, if you have positive emotions, that the brain lights up in a similar fashion. He can make another movie, okay, of what the brain looks like using fMRIs when in fact you have positive emotions. And it'll be interesting in terms of treating chronic depression, because these people all have a right to be depressed. Okay? Vicky's mother and the others, to start to think about how much of our interventions are not only physical in terms of pharmacological or others, but how do we as therapists create a therapeutic domain that nurtures resilience, that finds the survival skills and the strengths. And insofar as we could accomplish that, we would be that much more effective. I actually do 5-day presentations on this, so you've only gotten 50 minutes, okay? And you came all the way out here, so I know I violated the 7 o'clock time, but you came this way, you should get good stories, okay? So let me take just a few minutes to pause and see if there are any questions, comments, reactions to what I've presented so far. Anybody have anything they want to? Yes, sir, please start us off.
I was just wondering how long it was between the soldier getting released from Walter Reed and hiring her when he was employee.
Oh, you mean when she became the 100-person?
Yeah.
Now, I don't know the exact time frame. I mean, clearly, just in filling out all the paperwork to get the benefits and so forth, it had to be well over a year, you know, and started small and building. So, in fact, once you get to the, you'll see the reference to where I got that quote, and if you go back through the book, you could actually most likely track down that data. I mean, I find it impressive, you know, given what these people have experienced, how far they come. In fact, if you, I really encourage you to go to HBO and get the movie Alive Day Memories in terms of Galdofino interviewing at least another 10 people, and you can actually see those accounts. Okay?
What was his question?
The question that was being raised here was with regard to Dawn, you know, the one I showed who lost her arm, where she had, and she then goes on to become CEO of a company. And he was asking what was the time frame they're in. Okay? Sure. Yes, please, ma'am.
One of the things I noticed in the film of the two women, and I wonder about now, is a sense of purpose.
A sense of purpose.
To be an enormous factor in
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting because, you know, right now when soldiers return, one of the things that the mental health establishment, the VA, does is assess for the nature of psychopathology. You know, so they have a checklist. that says, are you experiencing sleep disturbance, irritability? Are you having difficulty drinking, getting along with others? And it enumerates just all. They do not ask people about what they brought back from the war that constitutes resilience, the sense of patriotism, leadership, band of brothers. And insofar as we as a society and the VA and others start to systematically assess for the rest of the story, right, the survival skills, the resilience engendering behaviors, it doesn't get enough attention. You know, and the media loves the 25% group. I mean, that's what the movie's all about. You know, the people who have difficulty, I mean, directors love intrusive ideation, flashbacks, okay?
Well, those women went with a sense of purpose.
Right, they went with a sense of purpose, right? I want to lead men. I want to get out of. And that purpose stayed on. You think I'm going to wear any arm? If you're going to cry, go into the other room. I'm going to do the recovery at my own pace. I mean, so you see the degree of sense of control that they have, as well as the positive emotions. Just one or two men. Yes, please, sir.
Is depression a chemical imbalance in the brain?
Is depression a chemical imbalance in the brain? I think it's more than that. You know, I think that clearly when people are chronically depressed, apropos of what we're saying, there are neurophysiological sequelae, okay, that show up at the neurohormonal level. But in terms of curing depression or getting people to cope like this, because these people have the potential of being depressed, there's more to depression and so forth than just that kind of event. You know, we now know that depressed people behave differently, and it elicits different kinds. I mean, one of the major findings is that depressed people are depressing. No, seriously, I mean, you know, they did these studies where they take depressed college students and have them call up for a blind date. And then they ask the person on the other end, you want to date this person? They go, not this week. Okay? So what happens is when the depressed person behaves in depressing fashion, it causes other people to withdraw. And then they say, I told you no one liked me. Okay? Look for yourself. I'm not making it up. So one of the things you got to do as a therapist is to help people appreciate how they inadvertently, unwittingly, and unknowingly produce the very reactions. So my job as a therapist is to have people appreciate about how they appraise events, what are their feelings, how do they handle those feelings, and most importantly, what are the stories they tell themselves? What are the thinking process that increase that level of depression? I try to get them to be a healing story. So take Vicky's mother, right? Her story is, you know, I've killed my kid. Could you imagine anything worse? Okay? And now what I have to do is turn her into a survivor. Okay? I got to help her appreciate her tenacity in spite of, and I need to help her make a gift of her experience so all these other parents could benefit from it. Okay? I mean, think of the mother who has the ashes of her son from Newtown, who makes a commitment each day. So it's
but don't go back to the wrong place.
Right, and what happens is they have to go forward. You know, who knows whether my children, I hope I'll be. And remember the smiling faces of the baseball players, right? I'd love to see the American Slugger indicate all the people who never signed the bat. You know, you got thousands of people who went on money, you know, for the American Slugger, Ted Williams, Babe Ruth. I want to know the people who didn't smile, who never got the contract with Louisville Slugger. They don't have that wall. Thank you for your, you got the last one right here, ma'am.
Is the checklist that begins on page 815, are those the 6 paths to resilience?
The 6 paths to resilience are those elements there, you know, in terms of the social support, the realistic optimism, the degree of cognitive flexibility, okay? The degree to which people can regulate negative emotions. You know, so, you know, each one of those are chapter headings, and if you get to the Roadmap to Resilience book, you'll be able to see more of those components included. Okay?
Okay.
Yeah, so there's no magic bullet. I mean, think of Vicky's mother, right? Yeah. I mean, what's her path to resilience? It's meaning making, right? It's her making a gift of. It's her mobilizing social supports, of her experiencing the depression and knowing that it's okay. There's nothing wrong with being depressed or angry. It's what you do with those emotions. And that's what we're going to try and help people.
There's nothing wrong with being depressed. Doesn't it damage your brain?
No.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, look at the world. You should not be depressed. If you go around thinking the world's okay, you're in big trouble. Okay? I mean, the world is depressing.
Okay.
I mean, if you don't get Ebola, go on with a Malaysian airline. You don't go on a Malaysia airline, wait for the biggest storm that's going to hit Louisville in the next month. That is depressing. The question is how long, the degree to which you control it. Okay? And the degree to which you balance it with positive emotions.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you for your attention and interest.